So here we go. This is giving yourself and other women in tech a voice, how to keep imposition syndrome, I'll explain that in a bit, at bay, and learn how to become an advocate for yourself and others. I'm Jennifer Riggins. You can find me on LinkedIn and Twitter at JK Riggins. You want to share anything, hashtag Women in Agile, but also all the hashtags you want to. So, to understand, as we've already said, I'm not technical. I've just worked in tech for a really long time. I'm Jen. I'm a tech culture storyteller. I spend my life sharing the stories where culture and technology collide or work together, collide. And I translate the impact of tech we're building. I've been a working writer since 2003 and specifically about tech for over a decade now. I write a lot, mainly for the new stack and container solutions, as well as I do ghostwriting for clients, which to be very clear, I always charge more for. I think that's important because it's not going under my byline or helping my brand, is it? I also have a lot of fun as a podcast and event host and online community organizer, including the Agi Next events. And yeah, please feel free to connect with me, follow me on Twitter at JK Riggins or LinkedIn.com/in/JK Riggins. I'm also the mom of an almost 5-year-old, and thus I'm always tired. I'm overworked, but I'm a successful freelancer, so that's my fault for not saying no more. And actually, I would say I will update from the last time I gave this slide to say that I've been better at working. My goal this year has been to work less while getting paid more, and I think I've been quite good at it. I could always improve, but you know. I wouldn't say I'm underpaid. I'd say I'm drastically increased my income since becoming a mother. Most would call me an extrovert. All would call me white, cis female. I have a university degree in a wildly unrelated subject, but that box is checked. So this gives me more power to ask for what my work is worth. I'm acknowledging my privilege, but that doesn't make it okay. And this is an ironic start. The last time I gave this slide too, I was on the first day of my period. I'm on the first day of my period again. Everything else I'm in a good mood about. I even wore my tampon earrings today in support. I believe we should all talk about periods more. So that is a personal interest I'm really into. More than half the population has them at some point. And at least in the UK, about 100,000 women a year are leaving the workforce early because of menopause. So, like all topics we brought up today, it's not just a female thing. Menstrual health affects everyone. Most importantly, my ethos, or like my firm belief, is that if the tech community is tasked with building our future, then the industry's diversity, equity, inclusion problem is everyone's problem. It will break that future. Basically, we're f***ed if the makers don't look more like the wide diversity of users. And I do mean the future's. Oh, I should have prefaced. I cuss, so you should have told me if your kids were listening. Sorry. I'm really happy to be here. Thank you so much, Bianca, Alex, and Philly for inviting me. I'm really grateful to be learning from all of you today and to share what I've learned over thousands of interviews with those minoritized in tech. That's a term I use because just like when we talk about imposter syndrome, it's something that's actively being done to us. To some more than others, certainly. And I know this is a technically Women in Agile event, and certainly tech needs safe spaces like this, but I just want to intentionally welcome all community members that don't identify or do identify as women or non-binary. And of course, I really want to learn from everyone. And I hope, like, if there are people that consider themselves allies here, of course, you are also welcome. Okay. So to start, I want to ask everybody if you can share in the chat of Zoom, please. What do you want to get out of this conversation? A lot of times just writing down your goals will help you focus on achieving them. Sharing them in a safe space like the Women in Agile Slack community would be an excellent place to share those goals, or more publicly if you want to. Someone said they graduated from a boot camp recently and want to be more involved in the women in tech community. Fantastic. I've got another Slack community for you as well. Techniques on being heard without being known as annoying or nagging voice in the room. And I'm sure there's a B word we can also add to that we've been called at some point. To be more confident, putting myself forward, taking up more space in rooms with leadership. Just taken a global role as part of our women in tech community want to get some inspiration and need to get allies involved. Yes. To build my own personal confidence, to help people around me, breaking through into the tech industry and building my confidence. Yep. We'll see if I believe that the confidence thing is something imposed upon us as well. We'll discuss and get inspired and hear stories that build confidence. Hopefully. Just a rough outline, it's going to be split into 2 halves. There will be some breakouts and stuff, but it's basically focusing on the individual, how you can help yourself, and then how you can help others, because all tides rise. So nobody's losing out by helping people. This is just this myth that organizations have brought up. So I'll just read this quote aloud first. So this is Sheryl Sandberg. I'm sure you've heard of her. She's the famous of Lean In and Facebook Meta, whatever it's called now. She has written in her Lean In book, many people, but especially women, feel fraudulent when they are praised for their accomplishments. Instead of feeling worthy of recognition, they feel undeserving and guilty, as if by a mistake has been made. Despite being high achievers, even experts in their fields, women can't seem to shake the sense that it is only a matter of time until they are found out for what they really are, imposters with limited skills and abilities. So this is actually an old slide from, gosh, 7 or 8 years ago when I did Women in Tech Talk. Thought I'd use it. I added that little slash across because it warrants revisiting. Yes, Sheryl Sandberg is the person that drew attention to the term imposter syndrome. I think she amplified it. That nagging feeling that you don't belong, that you need to work harder to prove yourself and others that you do belong. First, I do not believe that. I'm not trying to amplify Sheryl or Facebook Meta, because these are not people that need promoting, or maybe we should. We need to get different role models and stop trusting people just because they wrote a book. Look at how the founders of Basecamp a couple months ago considered some of the forefathers of modern business, and including remote work, but it turns out they're inclusive assholes, which is why they lost 2/3 of their employees about a year ago. So that was fun karma. Second, I'm pretty convinced this whole idea is bullshit. Any woman I know has worked twice as hard to get where she needs to be. Any Black woman I know has worked 3 times as hard to get where she needs to be. So wildly overqualified, typically. There's even research comparing pull requests. This will be, there's some resources at the end when you get the slides. There's even research comparing pull requests in GitHub. If gender is known to the maintainer, men's contributions are more likely to be approved. If gender is not known, because you can pick your username and stuff, women's contributions do better, meaning objectively, women are better coders. First, if you've not read Michelle Obama's autobiography, I think it gives fantastic insight and empathy into becoming and living as a working mom. I think the least interesting part is this part of her being first lady and all. There's some interesting parts in it, but no. So she says in the slide, it's not always enough to lean in because that shit doesn't work all the time. And that's a beautiful quote. So yes, Michelle Obama, we're not friends yet, is not a woman in tech per se, but she's right. It's not enough to lean in because that shit doesn't work all the time. Yes, the lean in groups, circling back to Sheryl Sandberg, have helped some mainly white women support each other and having a circle of professional friends so you can bounce ideas off of. And those conversations have let loads of women realize they all downplay their ideas. A cousin of the sorry syndrome, you know, how we apologize often, and probably weren't asking for enough money. But as Vox's Catherine Goldstein wrote, Sandberg's cult of hard work and personal responsibility is not okay and not inclusive. Don't leave until you leave. Encouraging to be the last one to leave the office causes burnout, which about 2/3 of all tech has, and it's wildly incompatible with a carer's life, like a parent. Embracing flexible work is an essential, like a baseline requirement if companies are trying to embrace diversity, equity, inclusion. And as Michelle's book pointed out, that comes with risks. She has a whole section that's amazing that when she had her daughters, she reduced her hours, which reduced her pay. But then she wasn't really reducing her hours. She was just reducing her pay because the workload was not reduced. There are some organizations, specifically in the UK, BBC and GDS, government digital services, that allow for job sharing, because some roles do actually need to be 40 hours a week, but that doesn't mean one person has to do it. We just need to think about this, that as Catherine Goldstein said there, I didn't read the screen, I now believe the greatest lie of Lean In is its underlying message that most companies and bosses are ultimately benevolent, that hard work is rewarded, that if women shed the straitjacket of self-doubt, a meritocratic world awaits us. Meritocracy. Bullshit, as we know. Catherine says, in my own life and my research and reporting, along with interacting with hundreds of mothers in the past 2 years, has convinced me this is untrue. So this whole idea of pull yourself by your bootstrap, work hard, not helpful.
Some people you got a lot of hears around your comments around Facebook, and so relieved you said that Lean In is terrible. And then someone has said, female colleagues in leadership roles in my team can sometimes be more patronizing and critical of other women in the team than my male colleagues. I'd like to find ways to encourage them to lift members of the team equally.
I think part of it's mimicking the habits of other people that we do to each other, and part of it is, sadly, especially in tech, we've been raised to believe there's just one token role for a minoritized person, usually a white woman, and there's only one spot on any team. So we get into this habit of competition when we all should be lifting each other up. But yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. That was great input, and it's totally true. But we'll also come up with more techniques in the breakouts, I hope, to help you as well in that situation, because that sucks and that's not happy. But finding a new job is also, if you have the privilege to, maybe the way to go. But yeah, I'm sorry about that. As this is a developer relations specialist, Nikima Prophet, and she told me, I think calling out imposter syndrome in people who are minoritized in tech is a real response to being treated like I don't belong. It's putting the onus on the person who is being marginalized instead of looking at the environment they're put into. Everything is showing me externally that you don't want me here. So it's, again, this idea that I'll bring up of imposition syndrome. Arise AI's product marketer, Crystal Kirkland, put it, I feel like imposter syndrome can feel like this multi-dimensional weight on your shoulders. You don't look the part. You're too young. Your gender doesn't fit. Very often I feel like I get lost in that and I lose sight of my knowledge and my expertise, and I have to come home to me and my knowledge. Sometimes you just have to remind yourself of everything you know. And then again, tech adjacent, but let's be serious. An infectious disease doctor and a director of health is dealing with a lot of tech. Dr. Matty Davis put it, some people are so mad to see you inhabit spaces you do. Let them be mad. And some will say you're not good enough, not qualified, that those spaces are inferior to theirs. That's not your business. Their ugliness is theirs and not yours. Just keep being great as you were. And then I would say again, we as a community can help you move on in that job, find a new job. So I'm calling on imposter syndrome. I warned y'all I cussed. I should have said in the very beginning. But I'm not saying your feelings aren't real. This feeling that you don't belong or that you are good enough can be very real and very destructive. And it can lead to procrastination and perfectionism and staying those extra hours, which leads to greater gain, greater, again, burnout and stress. According to the World Economic Forum, women work on average 39 more days than men a year. 39 more days than men a year. That's an average of 50 more minutes per day, per work day. So we are working so much harder. And I honestly have to say, just looking at the Agi Next, we just finished off the schedule for Agi Next, and I see it time and again in the applications. I see half-assed applications from white men. And from men in general, I see them apply, boom, 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 like several per person. Women are more likely to have very detailed descriptions, like go above and beyond, cite their sources for a response to call for speakers. And they're more likely to ask for shorter talks. They're more likely, and this is again in the window of our 2 conferences a year, certainly, but over the years I've noticed patterns, at least for us. And they're more likely to apply as partners, which can be good or bad, but I just think it's notable that they're putting in this extra work and they're asking for less, which I'm sure carries over into financial as well, because we're putting in more hours of work and we're not getting paid as much. And that's just paid work. Women are 4 times as likely as men to do unpaid care work too. Again, just a reminder, I'm using women in a more general inclusive term, but I know it's inherently less inclusive. And the so-called imposter syndrome holds you back. I was really excited this week. I just searched because I love the LinkedIn Gender Insights report, and it hadn't been published since 2019, which, by the way, in the world of tech statistics, is a very recent report. Some things I quote in my daily life are from 2017 because that's the most recent on truly like deep dive into demographics and open source. GitHub did once, not repeat. So I was very excited to notice that this had published last week, the LinkedIn Gender Insight Reports. It's LinkedIn as well. But to be honest, while it's a new report for a new year, nothing's actually changed. So it's still the same thing. It found that women are less likely to apply for positions, and especially more senior ones, and less likely to apply for a role unless they meet 100% of the requirements. And we know that job descriptions suck and overlist ridiculous requirements needed for the role. I cannot stress, if there's something you do, if you are hiring for a job, streamline that down. I'm sure there are not a need for all those requirements, and push back at your company for it. So I'm super excited that they published this. It's included in the resources at the end. So, consequences of imposter syndrome. You have a lack of ability to self-promote, which is what we will spend some time helping you do for the rest of this. You have this fear of letting others down, of coming across as arrogant, of being stigmatized as that inappropriate B word, to be clear. You underestimate yourself. Often women and sometimes men see themselves in a certain role or receiving a certain reward or opportunity because they are the token woman on the team. Trust me, that is wildly rarely true. They may have only carved out one spot, but every person is earning those spots. It's a moment to take advantage of the situation and prove you're an awesome qualified person. But again, it's not fun to be like the only Black developer in the room. Is not a fun place to be. Imposterism causes us to overthink and second guess. It makes us fixate on how we think others are judging us. In these fixations, we're usually wrong. Then we fixate more on how judgments might position our interactions. And then, of course, overworking is probably the most common cause of imposter syndrome. So is there anything we want to read from the chat?
A couple of things. So just to go back a little bit, this is maybe a question that might be for the breakout rooms, but someone had asked like how to jump into tech industry after a long term of no job. And then even before you talked about it, someone said imposter syndrome is BS, and agreed. And then you talked about the conference talks and said, and yet those half-assed talk proposals, more men are being picked to speak at conferences. And also tell your company to add the salary to the ads. Yes, please. Yes. And then OMG, all of the consequences of imposter syndrome, I've had them.
We will discuss finance, but continue. Sorry.
No. And then we had there's a bunch of questions here. So again, you might not address these right now, but you'll have said, I'm a graduated graphic designer from Poland. I've been trying to get a job as a graphic designer in Bristol, UK for a few years, but no luck. Do you think guys are more lucky to get a job in this industry, where to get support, skills, or get into beginner graphic design job with little experience now and how to get started?
Yes. I think I definitely agree, and we'll definitely help you find that job. I can't speak for the Bristol market, though I know a couple of people there, but we'll help you find that. But yes, sadly, yes, I do think men are more likely to get away with stuff. That's just the life they live in. They're in that world. So yeah, I call it imposition syndrome. The next time you're questioning your place, give yourself a check. Is this coming from a valid place within? Because sometimes you really don't know anything. And that's okay. I think that has value, by the way. Or are you being told you don't know something from external influences? I've been one to call it imposition syndrome because it's something attack forced upon you, often aggressively. That doesn't mean you might not have a lot to learn. We all do. Remember, cloud native technologies are so new that almost anyone can be an expert in it. 100% sure a man created the job title full stack developer. That's bullshit. No one can be a full stack developer. The stack is 7 layers thick now. And yet most of us live in this constant state of questioning where we belong, but there's some really nascent shit like Kubernetes. Even those that have worked for years are looking for ways to abstract it. They don't have the ability to learn all that. And just because you've gotten over your imposter syndrome doesn't mean you know everything. Sofia Vargas is a researcher and open source programmer at Google, and she reminds you to be comfortable in your own knowledge. Do the work, become an expert in the thing you're talking about. Be confident in what you know and be confident in your perspective. By the way, if you want to become an expert in something, giving a talk is a really good way to do that, or writing about it. And that also in turns helps other people learn, and in turns helps you become more confident and an influencer. But many of us may be new to tech. A lot of people on this call may be. Don't downplay an outsider's fresh perspective, which is important and valid. You sometimes raise a lot of things that so-called experts and more senior people forget about. Always being open, sitting at the table, and asking questions helps product owners and designers find ways to explain their tech, which is something they need to do better. And when tech is in our bodies, in our homes, in our hospitals, in our cars, we need more people asking questions. What are the unintentional uses of it? Who's excluded from using it? What would happen if it scaled to the size of LinkedIn or Facebook? There is, at the end of this talk, there is another resource on consequence scanning. It is a fantastic agile ritual, I believe by Sam Brown and Emily Weber are the ones that mainly made it. And I highly recommend you bring consequence scanning into your agile rituals. And by agile rituals, I mean like every sprint, you should be thinking about the consequence of your tech. By the way, to mention CNCF, open source's biggest event, is likely KubeCon Cloud Native Con. A few of these quotes were from a fantastic panel on women in tech, including this one from Sofia Vargas, that include, and like anecdotal chapters in history books that pretended to cover the breadth of Black or women's history in, like a few pages, sometimes a section of a page. This panel was at the end of day 3, Pacific time. This was presented as an in-person and live stream event, and it isn't even been published on YouTube, while 229 other presentations were. So that just says something, doesn't it? That this quote only exists. But also, many of you may be new to tech or wildly new to a specific niche. A great company I really respect right now, Honeycomb, is hiring, and the salaries are very good across the board. And I know they really respect diversity, equity, inclusion. But like for marketing, community management salaries, we're talking even like all West Coast US prices for remote, doesn't matter where you live in the world, prices. But they're in observability. That is a really new niche topic that not everyone's going to have experience in, but that's okay. So when Eleanor here joined observability provider Chronosphere about a year ago, her background was in building web apps, and she knew nothing about data or observability. She wondered how would she even then be able to exert influence on the team she was managing? What would success look like? What's realistic? She realized Chronosphere, the company she works for, has a wealth of experts in the space, and I do not need to be an expert to be a successful manager. Instead, Eleanor delegated her observability ramp up to her team, realizing I can focus on what I'm passionate about, which is people and culture and processes, and building a business that's inclusive and fun and has work-life balance. That's what I'm good at. That's what I'm an expert in. So take advantage of what you know. Don't think of how you can add value, not decrease. And sure, tech has us surrounded by technical experts, so we have to be willing to ask for help. But then we also have to stop downplaying our own knowledge. Just because most rooms we're in are filled with white men. As the new Stack colleague and our marketing manager, Colleen, said, have that influence because most of the time they want to learn something from you. And don't downplay that outsider's fresh perspective. It's important and valid. You sometimes raise a lot of really important questions, so I cannot stress, check out that consequence scanning. So first of all, if you're looking for classes or ways to up your anti-racism, I definitely recommend Kim Creighton's 3 courses. She has one specifically at work. They're 3-hour courses, and I think they're $30. But Kim has done really important stuff in that. But just in general, we have to have these guiding principles to remember, because we do have responsibility. I don't care what your job is. If you work at a tech company, you have a particular responsibility. Tech is not neutral, nor is it apolitical. Intention without strategy is chaos. So you need strategy to both help yourself and help others. Lack of inclusion is a risk and crisis management issue. Companies need to freaking realize this now. And you should always prioritize the most vulnerable. That's why those of us on this call that have the most privilege have more work to do. A really quick thing, learn to take a compliment. I got lucky, it was team effort. Brushing it off is no way to help your own work or success. I'm not talking about your looks, but when someone compliments your work, don't make yourself less by saying things like, well, it was lucky, or offer credit when it's not due. Be grateful. And then share what you learned from your peers. Don't forget to celebrate your success and treat yourself when you deserve it. And to, of course, give other people credit. This is a really cool trick I got from my old colleague, Lisette, who's like this remote guru. She has Collaboration Superpowers, which is the longest running remote podcast I know of for years and years. Lisette actually takes 1 to 2 hours on what she calls her Money Mondays, which she has an exhaustive and impressive checklist, which you see here. I'll make sure I add it to the show notes. It's not a show. To the PowerPoint notes. And it's an impressive checklist that she makes sure every bill's paid, every expense and receipts accounted for, every invoice is sent and has been received. And while I personally, self-employed, always put off invoicing, as I worry so much about delivering work more than chasing money, Lisette prioritizes ways she has transparency into her business finances and in actively pursuing her active growth. So 15 minutes a day, 5 days a week, she finds small things to do to help her grow faster or for those that have normative salary jobs, for ways to take something off your plate or for you to work faster. So yeah, she's a small business owner, but even if you take 15 minutes a day, you plan it out every week, even your LinkedIn profile, which probably is your own employer would like you to look nice at, especially if you're recruiting, and I'm guessing it's used for internal recruitment too. It's a quick and easy win to constantly update your LinkedIn profile, and it's part of the algorithm. So if you're looking for a job, we all do this thing where we put off and then we want to release a new CV or resume and we put it off. That's not how you want to do with LinkedIn. Constant updating your LinkedIn adds value to LinkedIn's algorithm. And then if you're looking for something to do, get and give LinkedIn recommendations. They're the most time-consuming thing, but the most valuable thing on LinkedIn, because they're recommendations for life. Thought this would be a good time to ask if there's any more comments, quotes, etc. in the chat.
Saying, I love this. I was just thinking today I need to ask for a client testimonial.
What I think is the most important thing for you to do as an individual, which is to keep a work journal. This is to remember not only what you do in your job description, but you should save your job description because they're often hard to find later and you may need to use it to refer back to you for positive or negative reasons. But also you want to take a journal of every time you went above and beyond and when you achieve things. This makes filling out performance reviews much easier. It also makes filling out your resume, CV, and LinkedIn profile much easier. It helps you get ready for job interviews. Especially make sure it includes numbers like money saved, revenue accrued, percentages like increased productivity or employee retention, any numbers you've managed directly or indirectly. That can be if you work with a bunch of freelancers or offshore developers. Just because you're not managing them directly doesn't mean you're not managing them or influencing them. And yeah, so we talked about the continuous updates on LinkedIn. Just don't wait, update as soon as you pivot your job. It really helps you get prepared for your next interview and performance review. And it helps with that imposter syndrome. So you remember you're fucking awesome. This gets back to the LinkedIn headline, but this is in general, you're not your current role. unless you're C-level, your headline shouldn't be where you work on LinkedIn, but who you are. So it's 80 characters are ideal. You can probably go over, but really 60 for mobile, 80 for, no one's really hiring people on LinkedIn anyway, on mobile anymore, since we moved to remote home. But it's hugely important for the search engine that you have all these keywords. So Agile people especially like to get really creative with their job titles. Don't for this. If you're an Agile coach or Scrum Master, please have both those terms in that exact point there. If you see how I wrote it, there's like a space, then it's called a pipe, that line, and a space. It's because LinkedIn doesn't understand funky punctuation. It renders weird on the app, and then you won't show up in search engines of LinkedIn. So don't add emojis to your LinkedIn. Don't add emojis really anywhere. Really, besides periods and commas, full stops and commas to most of y'all. LinkedIn doesn't read that punctuation. So that's why I have intentional spaces in there. It's super important. And now, if you work at a startup, elevator pitch is this like hot term. So get used to including your value proposition. It's like your elevator pitch, but your value added to a team, to a room, to anything. What are you good at? What you do and what you can do for someone else, what makes you memorable, what makes you unique at your job. So this is going to be our first breakout session. We're going to break out in approximately pairs, and this is going to be a 4-minute breakout session about, I'll tell when it comes back. Please also feed into the chat if you need to. Take a moment, think about it, and then give each other about 30 seconds to give your unique value proposition pitch. And then give feedback or ask questions for clarity, help each other rephrase it. Just be direct and honest in your feedback, but also, try to boost each other up. Remember, you're not your job, you're more than that. So I'll let y'all back. Go for it.
So there was 3 of us in our group, but I'd probably want to tell you what I learned about the other person, if that's easier. Because I never got a chance to get around to myself, because it was so interesting what they were telling us. So the person that I was tripled with is an event organizer as part of the role, but they find that there's skills outside of their role that make their role even better and better at their job. Is that they're very organized and they're always ready to help other people, especially if other people are overwhelmed, and that then feeds into what they do in their current job. It supports the people that they're working with. They're very dedicated. They're also very compassionate and kind. And they then bring that into the role to make them better at the role as well. But we didn't get on to what makes you unique at your job. We ran out of time.
Well, would you like to do, if you feel not shy about it all, do you want to try to do your own right now to share with the group what you were thinking of saying?
Okay. So what I do is I'm a senior quality engineer. So I focus on quality and coaching developers and other people in the Agile process and the software development lifecycle. What I do for other people is I help in different mentoring groups and coaching circles bring women and non-binary, so femmes and thems, into tech. It's not just women and non-binary, there's also men as well that want to get into tech, that are marginalised for various reasons, whether it's socioeconomic. What makes me memorable is, apart from my big head and hair, I've got a weird giggle. I'm Scottish, but I'm very easy to understand as a Scottish person. I'm a Mortal Kombat champion in 5 companies, so I'm undefeated so far playing Mortal Kombat. And what makes me unique at my job is that I do it from a very different perspective because of experiences with accessibility, neurodiversity, and just different usability groups. That's it. I'm awesome.
Thank you for saying that. At the end, yes, you're all awesome. You just sometimes get beaten down by the environment that you forget. So thank you so much for sharing. And thank everybody for participating in the breakout rooms. This is just a trick that boosts you up. If you've not seen this, the Wonder Woman pose before, it's a 2-minute power pose. I absolutely do recommend Amy's famous TED Talk. I'm pretty sure it's at the end if you've not seen it. Supposedly, if you do a position, something to taking up space, it releases testosterone in your body, which actually is a physical impulse of confidence. So that's super fun. Also, if you're upset, if you bite a pen, you are still triggering the same hormones as smiling. So that's a trick. So I kept this slide, which this is from 5 years ago, this slide originally, because we need more photos of pregnant women. Don't like your hands on your hips? That's okay. Wave them in the air like you just don't care. Starfish out or any other expansive pose. We are taught as women to cross our legs, to cross our ankles, to take up less space. We need to all take up more space. So let's take up spaces. And this is something that came up. If you are organizing an in-person event, please do not put women on panels, on stools. In general, don't put anyone on a stool because that's an accessibility thing. But people that identify as women are more likely to wear skirts. Please do not put women on stools. This outfit would not work in that. And there aren't that many outfits that pregnant women can wear. So now we're switching to more how to help other people too. What follows is not just work for those minoritized in tech. This is good work that should be done by allies, especially white males. If you have the most privilege in this room, and I know I have a ton of privilege, you damn well better use it to lift others. I didn't realize I wrote a cuss on a slide even. Look at that. Okay. This is one of my favorite words, interrupting. So, interrupting, if you don't know, is usually when a white male colleague, that can be any male at times, talks over usually female or non-binary colleague or woman. It is a common unconscious bias in action. They're not often doing it even on purpose, but yeah. So some ways to do that are don't be afraid to speak up with, Zena, what were you saying? Support each other, including especially men to support other women. As Yolanda was saying, or excuse me, I was much more interested in what Zelda had to say. It's like a kick in the nuts. It's a really good one. It's very effective. I also didn't even think of adding this. Maybe it's somewhere in there, but I had heard a wonderful technique. Women are also given these automatically assigned certain things that are not out of their job title. When sometimes we are community builders by nature, and maybe we want to be the one to throw that baby shower, or we want to be able to be the one that orders the cake. But we don't always have time. So a good thing to say is, or when a boss says, can you go get me lunch, first of all? Okay. But this is a technique I was told because I'd probably be a little crasser than that. I'd probably just laugh in their face. But sometimes you're in a different work situation that you need to, and you could say, okay, so I have this, and this to do today. Do you want me to prioritize your lunch over that, or do you want me to show you how to download Deliveroo? So these are really good techniques for when you're asked things out of the area. As a manager, especially, keep a checklist of who speaks in meetings. And this is really good as a coach too. Add a little mark for each teammate when they speak. It's a good way to spot people who aren't speaking enough and to learn why in your one-on-ones, but you may uncover some patterns. This is this picture you're seeing. This is, for those that are just listening, this is a woman holding up some knitting that's mostly red with a couple black gray lines. A Montreal City Council member knitted each time members of different genders spoke. I'm sure you can guess the red, which is the vast majority of it, versus the black. That was her way of visualizing and sending home that she was not able to speak that much and men were taking over the conversation and interrupting her. Note, this is one of the things that is not the work of just those minoritized in tech. This is the good work that should be done by allies, especially the whitest males in the room. You have the most privilege, you darn well better use it. To speak less. So just last week, I or not just last week, this was last year now. In December, I had my most popular piece published for Container Solutions. What up? It's my colleague here. A blog called What the Fuck is Wrong with Open Source? It's about how while tech in general is shitty, 20 to 30% women with only 9% of developers being male, while open source is about 3 to 4% female non-binary, or people that identify that way. That article outlines various reasons and then offers different ways for open source leadership to make the change. Proud of it. I shared it around. Then I got some harsh pushback from a woman of color in a huge women in tech Slack community. I didn't want to hear it, but I listened to it and it actually made me realize I was missing something in my article, and I added in the comments like an addendum, which is true that all the problems I was pointing out are, not all of them, but some of the problems are because it's a mostly volunteer role, and if it's necessary to have experience in open source because it's in like 70% of technical stacks now, then you should get paid to participate. And I think that was a really good point. So I thought that. Then I shared it in the ginormous Cloud Native Computing Foundation. It's one of the biggest open source consortiums in the world with over 100 projects, including Kubernetes being the most famous. Okay. So normally I share in that group because it's got like this massive Slack community. So I usually get clicks and people are happy. The title, What the Fuck is Wrong with Open Source, did not go over well there. Immediately got trolled by a handful of white tech bros whose fragile egos, avatars instead of profile pictures, and overconfidence that is not happening in their project. Before I replied, and yes, I later fed the trolls, I can recommend you not to feed the trolls, but that doesn't make it easy. A white man in tech I'd never met before took the time and explained why my piece was important and consistently referred back and quoted my work. It didn't take him that much effort. That took him effort. That's the work of being an ally. We all have work to do and things to learn is the point of that. Also, just to know, I happen to know the owner of that guy's company. So I DM'd him and I was like, hey, just so you know, your colleague is really doing the work. Good job. He's a really good egg. I was very happy to do that. And hopefully he gets benefits from that and more responsibility because of that. And I was talking about a white man to another white man of power. But yeah, just remember, it's not just about you as an individual. It's about helping others be seen as well. So if you haven't read Better Allies yet, it's probably the only book on diversity and inclusion by a white person that I'd recommend. So these are 5 things allies can do to sponsor women and underrepresented people in tech, we would say here, but in general, speak their name when they aren't around. Give credit to people when they're not around. Share their career goals with influencers. Share other people's career goals with influencers. Recommend them for stretch assignments, which are help move them up to the next level. But also, if they're doing a lot more work, help recommend they get paid for that too. Invite them to high-profile meetings, endorse them publicly, and then I would add to this, give a link to that LinkedIn recommendation, or even just comment on someone's post on LinkedIn. That's a wonderful gift you can do to wildly amplify anything they're doing. So yeah, I keep talking about LinkedIn recommendations and comments on people's posts. They're very important. Don't act like it was easy when it wasn't. Be open about your hurdles and failures. This is one of the most important gifts you can give, especially because we know we have some people new to tech on this call. The cognitive load in tech with its distributed stack is impossible for all of us to know or understand. As a more senior person in tech, share when you've messed up, especially in response to someone else's mess up. Heck, even mention when you've been Googling or using Stack Overflow, because if you are in a very technical role, it's exactly what you're doing. People need to feel safe to fail, and we know that's like a value of Agile. More from Better Allies, I think is very good. 5 things allies can do to help them speak publicly more, have people deliver project updates, introduce them to conference organizers, attend their dry runs, coach them, give them a seat on your panel. Don't you yourself accept a manel, which is one of my favorite words I didn't make up. If it's an all white panel or all male, don't accept that if you are an ally. Give them your keynote slot. How cool is that? I've had that happen where someone says, I'm sorry, I'm not there for a keynote, but like we're a white man says, but please meet my colleague, this woman, this person of color. That's great. To add to the fourth, just be very vocal about why you're saying no if you're not doing it. I would say that if a conference is obtusely shitty, sexist, racist, don't waste the most vulnerable's time by recommending them. It won't be a positive experience. And consider doing whatever you can at events that they'd actually benefit from speaking at. I write to people, I'm not covering your event because it's all white, etc., which is super fun. And wow, Philly, if I may share that because Seb is part of the Agile Next community as well. Philly says that Seb Rose has done that for me, pushed me forward for a keynote. That's great. And Seb's pretty great. So that's what you do. Also, not everybody has time to keynotes, but you can take that time instead of just saying no, suggest someone else. Allies don't accept speaking spots at all white, all male conferences. This is just to reemphasize that. Now, I say the most important thing you can do to help someone else in tech. Please talk about your salary with your friends and your peers. As Lily says, as someone who grew up pinching pennies, I couldn't even fathom the amount I could get paid in tech. Yes, this is, side note, this is with an American lens that is so great, but people are getting paid also that now working remotely. So she continued, when I moved to San Francisco, I asked for 100,000. I received a phenomenal 120,000. Then I realized everyone's getting paid 150,000. So this is Valerie Phoenix. 2 years after graduating from university, when Valerie landed a developer job at an insurance company that paid her real money at 24, she was making $91,000. Again, translate for British or European, of course, that's different because of healthcare and other reasons, cost of living. So Valerie was thrilled until she found out she should have been making about $30,000 more given her experience and the standard of living in California where she worked. I remember thinking it was a lot of money, she said, but looking back on the interview, I realized the HR person kept asking me what I was making at my last job repeatedly in different ways. She now knows that's considered discrimination in California, depending on where you are in the world. I believe in the UK and the EU, it is considered discrimination, but they may ask ways around it. Similarly, they may ask what you like to do in your free time to try to figure out if you have kids. Finding out that your employer is taking advantage of you is just excruciating. She said, I was distraught. I was really hurt. Is it because I'm young? Is it because I'm a woman? Is it because I'm Black? It took me 6 months to recover from that and then start looking for another job. So then she leveled up to a senior developer in Los Angeles, making 120,000 when someone with her experience should have been making about 140,000. She did try to negotiate for more money, but her employer said she couldn't afford it. Later, she learned, I think we know where this is going, that a male coworker with the same role and experience got that market rate she asked for. Just last year, Phoenix started a role as an engineering manager at Alma. It was her second managerial role, but the first time she was getting paid at the market rate, and the first time her salary finally outweighed what is an extraordinarily American thing, but going to soon become a British thing with prices going up, outweighed her college debt. Her experience is not unusual. Half of tech workers think that they're unpaid, and another 20% don't know if they are. So just remember, if you feel uncomfortable talking about money with your peers, you can go years without knowing that you're making less. So please talk about this. We have someone say in the chat, I did this in my old job and found out that my colleague was getting 25,000 pounds more than me at a very similar level, just because she asked for it when she started. Someone also said, anyone who can help me with negotiating a pay raise at probation, please. Not always sure of the British terms for stuff like this, but yes, we'll definitely help you with that. And that's another way companies keep less outgoing people down and minoritized people down in price and things. They say, I give you, you pick your salary. That's ridiculous. You should be providing value either pay everyone the same or provide value only for specific what you're looking for and keep that list short and then set a price. But it's wild. Seriously, this is the most practice negotiating with your friends and talk about salary. Don't ever tell recruiters or hiring managers what you make. I personally believe this is the smallest way that we can all have a big impact on inequities in tech. Talk about your salary. Again, the more privilege you have, the more it is you have to do that, and the more important it is. But seriously, talk about your salaries. There was one story that I want to anonymously share that was really great that someone talked about. Someone had a different member of our community had asked, how do I raise my price during the probationary period of a new job, or maybe like to raise it when you're done probation, which would be fair, I guess, in the company to say. And someone said that she did that. She achieved that because she asked for it. She said, I'm working harder than these people. I'm not going to stay at the company because if I'm not paid more, because I will be doing more work, because I am able to achieve these better. She brought, again, we talked about that work journal. She brought the facts, she brought the numbers, she brought the receipts. And then she had this great idea, probationary period works both ways. I don't think a lot of us think of it that way. There's a lot about the HR world where we are often feeling like it's one-sided. Something like performance appraisals really feels like a principal, or I guess you would say head teacher here. When you're in trouble and you're sitting on one side than the other. First of all, we all know performance appraisals annually are useless, and that's why they create that sense of inequality versus one-to-ones and things like that. But we look at it as one-to-one, and I've never even thought, like, especially in this current job climate, this idea that you don't need to keep on to this job. We're in 2022, there are other jobs in this community and other communities. Safe spaces will help you find another job, but we just tend to, we get in this habit that probation, I don't know, maybe this is an American mindset of me, that probation means, you know, you're not fully out of prison yet, you're not fully done, you still can't travel and things. So it sounds like a lot, you're lacking power, but I think that was a really good story to talk about power. She did get a raise, that colleague in tech that we spoke about. And she then talked to all the other women that were on probation and taught them the same tactic, and they all got raises. That's fucking awesome. So I just wanted to share that story. I think it's really good. You'll see in the show notes, and we'll have, I think there might be a couple more I have to add to this, but there's a lot of lessons here. This is hilarious, being a woman on the internet explained in 30 seconds. I don't know how, I'm pretty sure the link is somewhere on here, but what was a really interesting talk I saw recently was at Container Solutions, what the fuck is WTF, what the fuck is cloud native? I didn't name it that, but I respect it. And Cheryl Young, who was working at, again, we're talking about CNCF, the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. She had a great job. She was doing great. She worked for 3 years. She loved her job. She got pregnant. They didn't love that. Guess what? Apple said, come, do your parental leave with us. So she left, and then during a keynote, she talked about her experience, which was mostly positive, working with the open source communities. But then on stage, she shared that experience because she was using her power as a woman of color too, as a woman of Asian descent, but a high enough influential role in the tech community that she did that. I thought that was pretty cool, and pretty brave, really brave actually. So use the forums you get. Dr. Sal Freudenberg will only talk about the environment right now. So if you get her on stage and you want to talk about something else, she will bring it back to the environment because she looks at that as a crisis. Use the platforms you have when you have them. So what are you going to do next? This isn't for, well, you can use your own tool or whatever, but right now on paper, on your computer, take a single Post-it or add a 20-minute block in your calendar. What are you going to do to advocate for yourself next week? You can do it tomorrow, but it's Friday. We all know we're stressed and we need to do less work on Fridays, not more. And then most importantly, also, or a different post-it, but what are you going to do to advocate or lift someone else up? Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Please do connect with me. Please do amplify the stories you've heard in a safe space. And yeah, have a great day, evening, whatever you are in the world. Thank you.